Hi guys, Christian Murray here, publisher of the Queen's Post. Today I'm going to be talking to Stephen Raga. He's a candidate for the 26th Council District, covering Sunnyside, Woodside, Long Island City, and parts of Astoria. Hi Steve, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks. How are you doing, Christian? Thanks to be here.
Terrific. Good to see you. So tell me a little bit about yourself, why you're running for office, and also, for people out there that don't know you, can you sort of explain, who you are and what you do, etc.?
So I'm a longtime resident of Woodside. My family's been here for decades. Longtime public servant, longtime community organizer. I'm running here to make sure our neighborhoods have a council member who has a knowledge and firsthand in-district experience, both in government and advocacy, that's going to be needed in order to fight for them, not just on day one, but every day after. I mean, we're going to be coming out of this pandemic, and there's not going to be any time or room for learning on the job here. So I think I could bring that to at least to the campaign discussion. And after working 4 years in government every day for the neighborhoods of Sunnyside, Woodside, LIC, Astoria, I'm happy to rejoin recently the advocacy side of the table, currently working as a Northeast regional manager for policy and advocacy in the nonprofit space, but supporting cancer patients and survivors across 11 states in the Northeast. My background really stems from civil rights and human rights advocacy, most recently government, and just happy to have the opportunity to serve and put my name in there, because it's definitely a community I care about, have deep roots in, and really take this position personally, and I don't take it lightly.
Okay. Now, Steve, you didn't mention, which is kind of important, that you were the chief of staff to the Assembly member Brian Barnwell for a number of years, and also you're currently a board member of Community Board too. So, they're quite significant. And if I'm not mistaken, you're also on the board of Woodside on the Move. Is that correct?
I am definitely. It's an honor to be there.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously you're very, very involved in organisations. Are there any other organisations that people should be aware of that you're part of, or any particular governmental experience that you could sort of explain?
Yeah, sure. Like there's a few. I didn't want to take up too much of your time here. It's I've been, again, like you said, I was the chief of staff for Assemblyman Barnwell from day one into as I think only chief of staff, as if I recall right now. I haven't been up to date. But so I've already been working directly with a good number of the community organizations and constituents and all the groups in the city council district. And also just living here for a long time, my family, my mom and my uncles and cousins and aunts, experiencing the issues of our neighborhood firsthand, not just recently, from the 70s, 80s, 90s. And I know the people who live here and how they what they want to see done for our communities. Beyond my work in the district, a longtime member of the community, and a history of advocacy, like you mentioned, was on the Woodside, on the Move, Queen's Pride. Currently, I'm on the board, and a few others. I mean, 10 years ago, I founded. 11 years ago at this point, Filipino American Unity for Progress right here in Woodside. It's an organization focused on building community solidarity, both culturally and intergenerationally. Right now, it's in chapters across the country. So it's in Chicago, Houston, San Diego, Seattle. It all started in our district. Actually, after college, I moved back here, specifically into the district to work with Asian American youth and immigrant advocacy. At that time, if we remember, it was HR 4437, the Sensenbrenner bill in 2005, 2006, immigrant advocacy organizations across the country, full alert. And I was helping organize protests in our district, specifically across Roosevelt Avenue, to fight for our immigrant neighbors. Eventually, I served as the program coordinator for the Philippine Forum's Bayanihan Filipino Community Center in the heart of Little Manila, there on 69th and Roosevelt. And ever since then, like you mentioned, Community Board 2, both on transportation and environmental committees, been in the last few years with a few other nonprofits, but also I've been sitting on the board of the National Federation of Filipino American Associations since 2013. Now, at the time, that made me the youngest board member in the country, but that experience has given me an opportunity to learn from activists who've been doing this for decades across the country and locally, giving me a front row seat to policy decisions. So I've been there when nonprofit boards vote impacted a government vote. And I've been there when a government's budget decisions impacted an organizational's budget decision. And that's why my supporters, the campaign, believe that I have the everyday direct experience, whether in government advocacy or just as a resident, that's needed for this job. If the voters give me that shot.
So Steve, on local issues for a moment, what were your thoughts on the Phipps housing development, the rezoning there on 39th Avenue? I know you came out against it, but could you sort of tell us a little bit, as to why you did so?
Yeah, sure. So as a member of Community Board 2, I did vote against the Phipps proposal. My main reason is that to me, it didn't make sense to reward Phipps with additional properties while they have residents who are asking for basic needs to be met, not just recently, but for years now. It's been brought up already in this conversation, but in 2019, Phipps was the number 11 worst landlord in New York City. To me, that's a red flag, at least. If you don't respond to that type of entity with, I'll just do better next time, maybe. Not for me. I think you continue to deny their request until their residents are sufficiently doing well. And that's why I voted against this proposal in 2020. And that's why I voted also against it when it was brought in 4 years ago. So I voted twice against it. That's not even considering the rent pricing that they covered. So first of all the apartments that are being reserved for New Yorkers transitioning out of supportive housing were set at 40% of the AMI. Now, to me, at least, that's not reasonable. It needed to be significantly reduced to maybe even like 5 or 10% of the AMI. Then the rest of the apartments, if you set that at maybe 70 to 80 of the AMI, it's not affordable to the residents until the AMI formula is revised to only include the relevant income levels, either zip code, which I've been trying to do at the assembly, or by a specific like neighborhood jurisdiction. Proposals that are saying they're going to set up apartments at 70 or 80 of the AMI, it's just not affordable. I absolutely want affordable housing the district for my neighbors. But the Phipps proposal, as it was presented to us, is not actually adding affordable housing. And in good faith, I just couldn't vote for it.
So you're saying then that the AMIs for the transitional housing were too high at 40%. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we want to transition folks from their situation to better housing opportunities and situations for them and their family. But even at 40, I think that's a little too high for people. And if you could do it at 40, guess what? Somebody at 30 really needs it more.
Okay, that makes sense. Stephen, so I want to look back at another development or proposal that this one didn't fare so well, and that was Amazon 2 years ago. It's been a while, clearly, but what were your thoughts of it at the time? And do you think it was a lost opportunity that it didn't come to the district?
Yeah, sure. I mean, at the time, I was against Amazon's plan for a few reasons. And I think people have been stating it, but maybe it's worth it for me to restate it a bit, just to get to know where I'm coming from. Obviously, it completely skipped over the Euler process. That was a first sign that's not going to be good or a good project initiative for our community. It immediately removed the opportunity for our folks, the people, our neighbors, to voice their concerns and be part of that decision-making process. Second, that $3 billion in tax breaks, grants, any incentives. Why are we going to pay for Amazon to come to New York? If a company wants to move here, they should be contributing to our communities, helping build things we need, hospitals, schools, green space, not helipads for Mr. Bezos there. Third, the impact that would have in Long City and the surrounding neighborhoods would just be so destructive, would be so detrimental to the residents that are already here. LIC already has seen such overdevelopment, gentrification, and to add a company like Amazon would only hike up the rent prices more, up to a point where families that have been here for years, having to fight to stay in the area when they have no choice to leave. So I don't know. I don't like putting proud Queens residents to say, oh, I guess I'm moving to New Jersey. Like, I don't like the decision for our folks here. Lastly, I think it would have created too high of an impact in our already crumbling infrastructure. The city and state were both willing to give tax breaks to Amazon when it needs to be investing in our communities. So they're saying, yeah, there's some money we could find around here in the city and state budget, but for Bezos's helipad, not money to fix the lack of gas for almost half a year, just a few blocks down in Nypd. I mean, I think that was a slap in the face. I know that there was the potential of 25,000 jobs in our district, and it was highly favorable. But with the immense damage Amazon would have done to our neighbors, our friends, our family, far outweighs the good. It's a union-busting company. It works with ICE, destroys surrounding small businesses, and the quality of jobs for New Yorkers weren't even guaranteed. So, no, not a fan, Christian.
All right, good for you. Standing firm. So Stephen, what are your thoughts in terms of what should go in that part of Long Island City anyway? I mean, you're talking about 20 acres or something there or thereabouts in that general campus, what would have been the campus and sort of surrounding areas, some of which is public land. What would you like to see down there? Because I mean, it's invariably going to keep coming up for rezoning applications, etc.
No, I'm with you. It's a good question. It definitely is going to keep coming up. Personally, I think there's a few options that might work for that space. For starters, a new school, a community green space would be really great options. We hear about it a lot, but we need more schools in our district. We need to focus on reducing class sizes and also providing education that's closer to home. And if we can, also while creating green spaces just across our neighborhood, not just in that area of our district. I mean, the SEA has said repeatedly in community boards and in hearings that there's already enough, there's actually funding there. We just to build that school, but there's just no place for it. I mean, and the need for additional green space across our district is also crucial. New York City has an average of just 146 square feet of green space for each person that lives here. In LIC specifically, there's about 1.5 acres of open space for every 1,000 people. So a project that addresses both the overcrowding in schools as well as the severe lack of the space we already have should meet the needs of the residents. I mean, on the other hand, though, we can also focus that opportunity for and build a new hospital or healthcare facilities that our residents can have quicker, high quality access to treatment. I mean, we saw during the height of the pandemic that we don't exactly have the capacity in our hospitals to treat the residents of Queens. Our borough has the lowest number of hospital beds per person in any county in the US that has a hospital. So Queens also has an average of 1 bed per 1,000 patients. So residents who need medical care are not getting it due to lack of resources, and we need to prioritize expanding medical infrastructure and facilities here in Queens so that we have more beds and fewer body bags.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Now, obviously, for a developer to, put in a hospital or a school, they're going to need to, offset the cost of that through, residential and, commercial development. So, so therefore, what sort of level of housing would you deem okay, or how much commercial would you deem okay? I mean, would you be okay with like lots of large residential buildings if it supported a hospital or various community centers? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. More affordable housing is needed. Like you said, community centers should also be prioritized here. I've been working specifically in the eastern part of our district in Woodside, where just in the last decade, there were 3 Filipino community centers. They all shut down due to lack of funding. Specifically, mine that was working with immigrant communities, youth and seniors, and then one that was focused on healthcare. And just reinvesting in those opportunities for nonprofits and giving them the opportunity to get back brick and mortar space, I think would have to be a priority and something we need to definitely put in the mix here.
Okay. I mean, there's some big developments coming along Roosevelt Avenue in Woodside, actually. There's the one that's about to hit ULIP soon, I think.
That's right. The one on Roosevelt in like 62nd, that one?
Yeah, it's going to be a big one. So, we don't hear so much in terms of Woodside in terms of development, but yeah, there's plenty going on there, even just around the 50s. But anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we'll be going over that soon on the community board, but definitely would love to. The interesting thing about that, I mean, everybody knows who goes around that station That's the direct line of the airplanes touching down the airport.
Oh, yeah.
And like, you're going to really build 13 stories up over there. You're going to move the flight pattern, and guess what? Whatever whatever neighborhood is gonna, whether in the 50s or now in the 60s, that are gonna experience the low level of planes, that's going to be another issue it's going to bring up for sure. And that's what happens when people that are that don't have everyday knowledge of our community, our district, are put in these positions to impact our lives.
That's interesting. So, Stephen, I want to move on to the New York City budget and policing. What would your approach be to the police budget, and what is your view on the NYPD in general? Following a pretty ugly year in policing, nationwide and here in the city.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always been an advocate against police brutality. A few years ago, I was on the Freedom Rides all the way to Ferguson, where we advocated for and fought for justice against for Michael Brown. And this is something we need to even bring back here in New York. I mean, our taxpayer, these are our taxpayer funds. So I believe we need to reclaim them and reallocate. We need to take these funds back, reclaim them that we've been giving to entities like the NYPD, and reallocate them to invest in our public schools, social service agencies, CBOs, so that we can rebuild communities that have been targeted by over-policing. I think we should reduce the budget by maybe at least $2 billion, somewhere between the $2 billion to $3 billion range, I believe is needed. And with those funds, we need to immediately hire more social workers, more case workers. We need to expand cash assistance and food assistance programs so that New Yorkers have the food and resources they need, and also those funds to fully fund NYCHA and invest more in social housing. So why does the NYPD have a brand new robotic tech when New Yorkers are struggling to put food on the table, pay for rent, and afford healthcare, especially in this last year? So what I would like to see also is a creation of some sort of crisis response team that can specifically respond to emergency calls for those in distress and for unhoused New Yorkers that only utilize nonviolent methods of intervention and focuses on de-escalation. Right now, I believe, and a lot of folks as well, believe that we're treating our homeless population as criminals, when in reality, they're victims of failed systems and they've been denied the support resources they need to survive. So we need trained professionals who are equipped with helping those experiencing emotional and mental distress. So in addition to this, I think we need to revise our public school and shelter model so that no longer tools of policing, and we shouldn't be policing our students and responding to their behavior with a harsh discipline that mirrors our actual prison system. And also there needs to be a large focus on demilitarizing our police. Obviously, it should not have military grade equipment. It's unacceptable, and it only allows for a greater state violence against New Yorkers, particularly our Black and brown community. So again, we need to set limits on what the NYPD is able to procure, and also ensure that funds from the city council is not being used to buy any military grade equipment. No way.
Okay. Now, Stephen, some people will think, I can't even get a cop now, and that's with $6 billion budget. How am I going to get a cop when there's $4 billion budget? There's no cops in the precinct, can't get them anywhere. What do you say to those people when they hear budget cuts?
Well, a few things. Well, then you need to go up to these parks where there are 60 cops looking at four kids skateboarding on a August afternoon. Like, it's you need to do a little walk around the block here. Obviously, I think they make the point themselves. Look at the crime rate now. With the current size and budget of the police force, studies have already shown that more spending on policing doesn't really prevent the crime. The NYPD isn't even legally obligated to prevent it. Their job is to respond to crime. Okay. So what we should spend our funds on the programs that actually prevent the crime. So what prevents that? What prevents crime is better access to mental health resources. What prevents crime is better community programming, affordable housing. What prevents crime is access to basic resources like food, water, and public utilities. Now, don't get me wrong. We understand that there are during, especially with the rise in the Asian American hate crimes. There's one Filipino woman that was attacked just yesterday or 2 days ago. That we're not saying all of it is hard. It's just there's over policing in our neighborhoods, and the budget is way out of control. So we need to reallocate that and rebuild for New Yorkers.
Okay, all right, Stephen. Now, one thing is you've worked a lot with immigrant communities, so this kind of ties in a little bit with that. Do you think that non-citizens should be allowed to vote in New York City elections?
Yeah, sure. It's good you bring that up. I mean, you could ask me that, 5, 15, 20 years ago, you would have got the same answer, which is absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's important that we allow all residents of the city to have a say in the elected officials who are making decisions for them and their family. Listen, being able to vote is such a crucial aspect to being civically engaged and actually being listened to by elected officials or whomever. So our city right now is composed of 3.1 million immigrants. That's over a third of the city's population. Immigrants also comprise almost half of the workforce, and not to allow them a vote means that we're completely disregarding the voices of immigrant communities who have worked to keep the city alive, especially during the darkest moments in the last year of the pandemic. And now a bill that would allow 1 million immigrant New Yorkers to vote, I think is great. I would support it. If we want people to participate in our elections, why would we restrict voting? Undocumented immigrants pay a total of $1.1 billion in state and local taxes to New York. It's time we allow immigrant New Yorkers to directly have a say in their futures.
All right, terrific. So Stephen, I want to talk to you about community boards now. You're obviously on community board too, but you're sort of seeing a little bit how the sausage is made. You see who's on the board each year and who's not, etc. So how would you, as a council member, select board members, and do you think the process that's currently, up and running works in terms of board member selections?
It works. To what degree is it favorable, and with the result we want? It's great you bring that up. I think it's just past my 5-year anniversary of when they told me I made the community board. I was really excited to do it. It was my second time applying, and definitely has been a pleasure to serve. But either way, I do believe there should be a change in the appointment process. I mean, I was very happy to be appointed and really fortunate to work on issues actually directly impacting my community, my block. And that opportunity should be dispersed amongst our neighborhood, not just with members of the community that have good standing with any people in really strong influence and power. I'm unsure there should be, I've been hearing, district-wide elections. I think it might be a little costly, and I don't want to see people spending hundreds or thousands of dollars to make it onto the community board. What I would envision, or at least support, is more of like the petitioning process for candidates who want to get on the ballot, where there's some kind of signature collection aspect in an application. But don't get me wrong, like completely online, right? But so community board applicants could be required to collect something, 50, 75 signatures to show that at least they have support from their neighbors, their small businesses, their neighborhood and their community, and have established relationships within our community board district. Now, I know collecting signatures is a process that can be really time consuming. I know this firsthand, especially recently, but I think 2 to 3 month or multi-month window to collect signatures is pretty reasonable. But also, if we could go further and create New York City's first online petitioning system for community boards, so that we're modernizing our system, but also allowing for persons with disabilities, people who are working multiple jobs or working overnight shifts, people who are responsible for childcare, giving them the same ability to be on the board. With this also means making sure Wi-Fi is accessible to all, making sure that whatever online system is created is also accessible maybe in public libraries. But definitely, I think it's something we can be more inclusive in, and happy to lead that charge if put into position.
Right. I mean, the council member selects half and the borough president the other half. So you would basically call for people to get, say, X number of signatures, once they met that threshold, then the council member would make the selections. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good.
It's just part of the process to to let them know, to let us know, the community know that they are indeed no members of the community, and it's just another aspect that legitimizes the application, I believe.
Yeah, sort of like a vetting of them. Okay. So Stephen, what are your thoughts on the transportation network in Western Queens? What do you think can be done to improve it, especially as more bodies are coming to the district?
Yeah. That's a lot. I mean, for starters, we all saw like the 7 train a few years ago literally fell apart, and a spike went down on a car right a few blocks from me on Roosevelt and 65th, right in front of Red Ribbon. And they took the video, and it was just, I mean, it's right then you could see the level of disrepair our transit system is in currently. And this absolutely needs to be a major focus of the MTA, as well as expanding accessibility in stations. So number one, investing in our transit infrastructure. This is also a really great moment to make sure that we're speeding towards a zero emission transit and combining our transit system with more green technology. So alongside that, I think we need to expand our dedicated bus lanes to make sure that we're introducing priority bus signals to make bus transit even quicker. By city council districts, bus performance in Western Queens is worse than 82% of the others of the city's other council districts. I thought it was citywide. Like, I was taking that Q18 every day. It was not fun. But this is great ways to invest into our buses and make them more reliable methods of transportation. There's a number of transportation deserts in Queens, and buses are key to making sure all residents have that access to public transportation. It's great that a dedicated bike lane is being added to Queensboro Bridge. Planning like that it just makes it easier for cyclists and pedestrians to utilize the bridge. So moving forward, we need to ensure that all roads and are spaces for all transit users, pedestrians, cyclists, just everyone.
Okay. Now, I didn't ask you a question that I typically do, and that is about the rezoning process in ULIP. What do you think about the ULIP process, and do you think it should change, or what? Or are you happy with the way it is now? What would your approach be toward it?
I think it should absolutely change. Currently, the ULIP process, as it stands now, at least, doesn't really allow for much community feedback, it really gives an opportunity to override the wants of the community. A redesign for this process is pretty necessary, at least I believe. In the future, in any applications for like a housing development, I believe there should be AMI standards that are immediately built into the requirements, so that all potential housing would be deeply affordable in the neighborhood that it'll actually be built in. For example, if we're going to when you're in this position to legislate and make policy, you could mandate specific thresholds and barriers. So if we mandate 40% of apartments to be set at 25% of the AMI, and this is obviously assuming that it's the current AMI formula in the first place, and let's say 40% at 25, and then 40% of the apartments at 40% of the AMI, 20% at 75% of the AMI. I mean, additionally, I think that the community board should have more binding vote in this matter. The current ULIP process basically tells the community board that their vote is kind of just a suggestion. There's no real teeth in the process, and that they have no actual count in the future of their neighborhood. So I've seen it multiple times on our board meetings on too.
So you would have the board votes be binding on the project, so whereby if the board says no, that's the end of it? Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. What about the you might get some people that, I mean, you have a lot of critics of community boards that basically say it's a whole lot of NIMBYs and nothing gets done. What would you say to that?
I say that they're not attending all the full community board meetings. That's a lot. It's a lot of hard work being, put over there, and I understand it. Sometimes these meetings go after midnight, but a lot of work is being done, and it's not just what people are seeing on the regular monthly meetings. It's the hearings, it's the actual walkthroughs into the community. It's all the behind the scenes work that's being done. So to say that community board members aren't in the front lines of understanding a complex situation, I think come and join some of these walkthroughs that we're having. It's definitely just a wealth of information that the members have.
Right. Do you think though that some of these term limits could actually throw away some of this great knowledge? I mean, there are board members out there that have been serving for many, many years that know a hell of a lot. They know where all the problems are. They know where to look or ask questions, etc. What are your thoughts on that and the term limit issue?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree. I mean, you can even see there's a lot of wealth of information that has been leaving CB2 lately for a number of reasons. And there's ways around it. I feel like if these are community leaders that have served for so long, I mean, their heart's in the right place, I believe. And if there's ever a way that we could still keep that information there, but not officially on the community board, but maybe have some sort of like a mentoring onboarding about different I don't want to say like a big brother big sister thing, but it's very similar. If there's a way that if someone's on the board for so long, they know the process, and some of these committees, you need multiple terms to understand the intricacies of why things are being done and what triggers what policy on the local, city, and state, federal level. So having that, having some sort of, if somebody is term limited and they can't reapply, still having them maybe do workshops for the committee member unofficially, not as wearing a community board member hat, something like that to keep
like
them
an advisory board.
Somewhat involved. Absolutely. I think that can work. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so we don't lose that institutional knowledge, but at the same time, we give newer folks the opportunity to serve.
Okay, terrific. Now, Steve, was there anything that you'd like to bring up that you're running on, or policies that you'd like to address? Questions that I haven't asked you that you'd like to comment on?
Yeah. I think there's one. I mean, my background is really in before government is civil rights and human rights advocacy. And it's for me, I mean, even the committee, that would be the number one committee I'd want to serve on. But I've been in local government serving our neighborhoods every day. But even just before that, it was really centered around human rights, civil rights. I've been serving the U.S. Civil Rights Commission on the advisory committee for 3 presidential administrations after being appointed by President Obama. And I believe just the primary focus of human rights and civil rights has been conflated in New York City, where civil rights, obviously, it really refers to discrimination stemming from the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Mm-hmm. And our taxpayer money is going to entities, both in the city and state, that say this is human rights, but it's really civil rights. It's making sure that no one is discriminated because of a variable, of gender, of race, of religion. There. But saying it's human rights, I think when we say housing is human rights or education is human rights, there's actually international human rights standards there that for some reason have not been implemented on the federal level for the United States, although signed, like Jimmy Carter signed, was a signatory to a few. On day one, if given that opportunity, I would definitely draft legislation to make sure that on the New York City level, there is an opportunity for us to have actual human rights standards that is similar to the international level. And I don't know if you know this, across the river, the UN is right there. So if we're going to have something that mimics the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or anything that protects political rights, social rights, economic rights, I think it should be a city like New York.
All right, terrific. Well, Steve, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you.